there are many big takeaways we need to take away from this midterm season. November is always a special time of year because you not only got the stepbrother to Christmas, that's in Thanksgiving. I have Scarlet and Violet coming out next week for Pokemon. I'm copping that, as well I'm copping a ticket to Black Panther this weekend because I gotta be on it. November is also a special month because every 2 years we have the presidential elections as well as the dreaded midterm season. And while presidential elections receive most notoriety and more hype, this midterm season has been most hyped as it's been in a while, because you not only have, things such as, deciding the House and Senate, but also you having, abortion, health equity, social equity initiatives on the ballot in many different states. Hell, you even have the notion of slavery and whether or not it will be still in the Constitution being debated in 5 states this past Tuesday. But now that we're, 3 days removed from the elections, the first thing you need to know is that this notion of a red wave turned into a red wedding, as many Republicans were either defeated or are still stuck in close, knitted matches with their Democratic counterparts. Now, if you're a history buff like me, usually during the midterm elections, the opposite party usually sweeps through Congress, usually sweep through the House, the Senate, because a lot of American public view the current situations, going on in America as the fault of the current president. And so if there's stuff going on like right now with inflation, crime, and all that going across everywhere, then usually people are going to view it as the president's fault. Now, the actuality of it, usually a lot of the stuff is not really the president's fault. It's usually based on policy that was passed during the last administration, or, years and years, back down the line. Or, it's like policies at the state level, which is neither here or there. But the fact of the matter that there are many races that are still too close to call, and that many people are still, counting ballots, as well as like recounting them, checking their list twice like Santa, is very important, because that means the American public hasn't really given up on Biden, and they're trying to build a supporting cast around him, and they're willing to put up a fight for it. Now, I'm very excited for my next point, because this election, Gen Z stood out, came out and voted, and really not only just showed, the Democrats that, hey, we want to support your policies, but it's really showed the Republican Party that they messing up. One huge win for Gen Z is that we've elected our first, House representative in Maxwell Frost. And so Maxwell Frost, he is, Canada down in Florida. Basically, he has many, Gen Z center, policies such as, health equity, gun reform. He has a wealth of community organizing, especially when he started in 2012 when Sandy Hook took place. He even quit his job to do Uber and Lyft just to be able to have the flexibility to go on a campaign train and meet with, delegates, constituents, as well as to pay rent. And that makes him not only just a representative for Gen Z or, as a person of color, but he actually represents the American dream type hustle that's been going on in America that a lot of us, especially in college, had to endure for many years. Not only we just, elected our first generational representative, about 7% of voters were Gen Z, as well as 63% of that vote went to, the Democratic Party, signaling that the Democratic Party is doing something right, at least, into what policies, they're trying to make that really caters to Gen Z in the future, such as climate change, abortion rights is on the bill, as well as like more, collective center, initiatives that we need to have in society. And that point really made a lot of Fox News, anchors and many Republicans mad, because now they're realizing that, Gen Z is actually voting. Like, they can't be making memes like they did a few years ago that, young people don't vote, young people don't get out, young people don't show up, because we actually are starting to do that, because we are actually starting to learn our political power, and that, the political determinants of our health, as well as our political determinants of our future, is at stake. Some Republicans are so threatened that they're willing to raise the age to vote from 18 to 21, because they have this notion that the youth are being poisoned by college, the youth are being poisoned by society. Let them be out in the real world for a little bit and, really experience what life is like. Maybe they'll start voting for us again, which I can tell you that is not going to work. But these ideas being floated around by Republicans are very concerning, because of my next point, which is voter suppression and having a real, true, honest conversation about it. Not only do Republicans want to curb the younger vote or the younger voices, but they've been trying to curb the voices of BIPOC individuals for many years now. Now, as a black person, as well as a black man, I've been in many situations where I have family members, cousins, uncles, aunties, grandparents, whatever, friends, coworkers, and all that, who went off at other people, especially other black people, because they didn't get out there and go vote. Well, I feel like all black people, if they feel politically inclined, need to get out and go vote, because the brunt of the policies that come from either side is going to impact us first and the most. We haven't had an honest conversation about voter suppression. We need to stop catering to this white myth that, black people don't vote, black people don't want to get out and vote, black people don't care. Because at the end of the day, in this election alone, there was 11% of the voters being African American or identifying as African American. When you look at the population, 13% of the country is African American. And while we need to all try to get to that 13% collectively across the board, with representation nationally in elections, we need to stop with this old white lie that black people don't vote, black people are lazy, black people don't do this, that, and the third, that's been passed down for many, many, decades. It's often used by many, people from the left to the right to try to guilt trip other black people to voting, try and say like, oh, you don't vote, without recognizing the fact that we weren't really included in the process to vote in the beginning of the system of voting whenever it started during colonial America. When you really think about it, when you want to talk the big picture, the 1964 Civil Rights Act that allowed black people to vote across the board with little restrictions was only about 60 years ago. And when you look at your grandma, your mom, all that stuff, my parents were born during that time, it really wasn't a long time ago. And when you put that in context, that politicians are more likely to go to wealthy white communities, whether it be on the left or the right, to try and gain more money and try to get more donations, but yet, often gives, black people the short end of the stick when in terms of engagement or, actually, engaging with them about policies and all that, then it's not surprising that you're not going to have everyone on board, especially from the black community. While people are still circulating this like myth online, we need to talk about the real menace of society, which is white women. Before y'all get on my case, I don't think all white women are evil. I met some pretty dope white women. I'm friends with a lot of white women. But we really need to have an honest conversation that, a lot of these white women were on social media, talking about Roe v. Wade, oh, they took away my rights, this is unfair. I'm going to go out and vote. I'm going to vote for my rights and all this stuff like that too. When the majority of white women across the nation voted for Republicans who are actually trying to strip away abortion. As you can see right here, white women made up 37% of the population and made up 53% of the Republican vote this year. I don't know what the issue was, whether a lot of white women are evangelical and was just trying to put up a face for their friends, or they were forced by their friends to start talking about Roe v. Wade this past summer, or that they're just one issue voters, and when it came to inflation, that's something they couldn't really have a pass on. But at the end of the day, it's very hypocritical. And when you talk about how oftentimes, like I said earlier, that, people talk about black people don't vote, black people don't get out and vote, then you have like the majority of white women who having their rights taken away vote for the people that are actually taking their rights away. It's really telling. If there was a shift from white women going from Republican to Democrat, many of these people probably would have won their races. And like I said before, this is not all white women. I don't think all white men are terrible, evil, secretive like this. But the majority of you are. And this is why when we say we don't want white allyship, we're very, skeptical of white allyship when it comes to race, when it comes to women's rights and all that, because oftentimes a lot of these white women are sneaky. So this is a shout out to all my white women allies out there who's actually trying to call this out. I applaud y'all. And for people or women, white women who are trying to be, allies, call it your families when you call it this behavior and really actually stick up for your beliefs, because at the end of the day, this election could have went a lot better, to the Democrat side. It could have been a blue wave if more women would have voted. But yet we're in a situation like we've been in for many, many years. My next point, which we're going to be talking about the future of public health. And as of right now, I can tell you it's very, very uncertain. As the results are still coming in, as well as there will be a senator runoff rate here in Georgia for Warnock and Walker, we don't know how the House and the Senate will look. It could be pretty much Republican ran. One could be ran by the Republican, one would be ran by Democrats, or it could be a Democrat blue wave. And even if the Democrats fail to end up taking the House and the Senate, or just one out of the two, or just, even if they take a blue wave, it's still a good sign that majority of the country still believes in the notion that, Biden and basically his agenda. And it's also pretty good for us as Gen Z to actually step out and vote, because we're actually having our ideas such as climate change, abortion rights, gun reform, health equity, Medicare for all. Basically, we're having those ideas still put at the forefront during this season. And with us being the increasing population growing and growing and growing every year, I'm very encouraged that this will still continue to grow. And that someday, for me personally as a Texan, Texas will actually be blue, Florida will be blue, Georgia will be blue, And basically we're able to actually see the ideas that we've been like talking about for many years come to fruition. But with that being said, that was my forecast for public health as well as my thoughts of the midterms. If you like what you see today, please like, subscribe, turn on post notification, all that wonderful good stuff. And if you want to learn the foundations of becoming a public health whiz, I implore you to go watch this video about the 5 things that you need to know about public health before you can think about making it a career. But with that being said, stay warm, stay frosty, depending on what part of the country you're in, and peace out.